Thank you for choosing this workshop. My name is Karen Cook. I'm Commissioning Manager for Kent County Council with a lead on the voluntary sector. I'm co-facilitating this workshop with Dominic and with Mary. But I thought it would be helpful just to go around the room first and introduce yourselves and say a little bit about what you think the obstacles are to technology in the community, and maybe any thoughts you've had about overcoming that. And then Dominic will share with us some of his slides about the Casserole Club from this morning. So I hope that's all right with everyone. Shall we start over? I know it's a funny room to do a workshop, but start over with you.
Hi, I'm Sandra Springer. I'm Chief Officer of Age UK in Tunbridge Wells. One of our big obstacles is not necessarily getting older people to use the technology, but once they can, it's things like having access to broadband in their own homes is still terribly expensive for most people, and some of the equipment. So we buy things, but they go out of out of vogue or out of use very, very quickly. But having said that, we have, I don't know, maybe 30 or 40 people a week, all of whom will be well over the age of 70, who turn up with their iPads.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Thanks, Andrew.
Hello, I'm Mike. I'm Service Coordinator for Base in School Pounds in Greenborough on the Isle of Sheppey. Obstacles, I would say, are affordability, knowledge and availability.
Right.
I'm Judy Bell from Capital Care and Support. We run a domiciliary agency and supported housing for adults with disability, elderly and children.
We were just talking about what the obstacles are to using tech in the community, really.
Affordability and access to them.
I'm Jodie Giddings. I'm the Community Manager for East Kent MenCap, supporting adults with learning disability and complex needs in day resource and supported living. So again, it is affordability and how we kind of tap into what is local to us. So sometimes it's about everybody, not enough network sharing really.
Thank you.
I'm Teresa Lampert. I'm a service user in mental health. I don't know, I'm 24 and probably got a bit of a cleaning world on this, but I don't think there are barriers. There's only barriers when we make them. And I think it's about breaking down those barriers and saying, well, what's the solution? Yes, we can put problems up, but we've got to break them down. That's our job today, to discuss how we can break them down.
Thank you.
Hey, James Lampert, husband of Teresa. I'm a commissioner at KCC. In terms of barriers, I think actually, as a question for me in relation to the local authority, and actually should the local authority be an enabler and a kind of a local systems leader? Actually, is it really good as a big organisation at doing that? And how can big organisations like County Council and other big provider organisations actually start to break through some of the gubbins and the rubbish that stops us from actually just putting some of these innovations into practice? Let's just believe that some of this stuff works and just try it out. I would get faith in it.
Jeremy Labour from Eastern Europe Consultants. Very privileged to be working with County Council on their transformation programme. My particular interest is in reviewing existing cases and promoting independence, and finding ways of discovering independence that may well be there, but and if that reduces the need for resources, that's great. Again, I'm looking more for opportunities than problems, I think, and had some very interesting interactions already with all the sessions as to how technology can, even for in an older person's world, how technology can be made accessible enough and easy enough to use that it actually has daily efficacy, as opposed to something that just gets put on the side and that's the end of it.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm Julia Watling, the Volunteer Centre Manager at Slough Volunteer Centre. Our particular interest is using social media via our befriending scheme. I think some of the barriers, as we said, is knowledge and affordability, but also getting over the fear of the unknown for some of the elderly clients.
And I'm Sophie Hosking. I'm the Community Development Worker for Dover District Volunteer Centre. And I think perhaps some of the barriers are just making it simple for people to find out what's out there, so navigating all the services.
Thank you. I'm Catherine Brenner. I'm an occupational therapist and enablement team at Families and Social Care at KCC. Similar to other people, not sort of targeting older people, but any generation, people that don't necessarily have things or aren't able to access things, and how we can tap in and help them, not to isolate them from things going on.
Hi, I'm Jane Barsa, new Assistant Director for Dartford, Grosvenor, Swanley and Swale, Older People with Physical Disability KCC. And I suppose because, although I've been around Kent a long time, the area for me is a new area, and it's how you make and find out what's out there to promote the opportunities and everything else, although I do actually live this end of the patch. And one of the issues I think commented before, if you're talking about technology, living here, broadband is not good, it's very intermittent, so you can't guarantee it, and the frustration not getting through that.
I'm Judy Thompson. I work in an elderly care home, KCC, and it is about having the equipment for them to use, and as Joan said, it's difficult with the broadband, and enabling the client group to be able to understand what they can do, and for it to be easy enough for them to work with.
I'm Alda McQueen. I'm Locality Manager for Housing 21 for Kent. I think as an organisation we do work with technology, but sometimes it's about the accessibility of that technology, and then just changing the culture within your staff so they can enable our customers and our tenants to be able to use it.
I'm Stephen Elston. I run a charity called Compaid. We train disabled people in digital skills. We're helping our client base overcome barriers, but I think one of the things that maybe hasn't been touched on yet is the rapid pace of technology. So, we can be training clients in, using touchscreen, systems. What's it going to be in 2 years' time? How do we keep pace, and how do vulnerable people keep pace with technology?
I'm Camilla Rosen. I'm the Information Governance Manager at Cara Support in Kent and Medway, and we're a Cara Support charity covering South West Kent, DGS and Medway. There's a few barriers that it's all quite new to us as an organisation, so we're trying to start up the idea of social media and digital inclusion that way. Because we have such a disparate group of carers, they range from 5 to 105, but also the demographics of them too. It's trying to reach as many people as possible in these ways that doesn't take up a full-time post of my work, but wanting to include your working age people working outside of the working hours that we do, as well as young carers and older carers too. So just the range of those that we try and include.
I'm Peter Marsh, Project Officer for Dementia-Friendly Communities with KCC. I think one of the barriers I've encountered is the quality of what's on available of information, that because it's so free and easy to access, that unfortunately a lot of the sites just don't actually provide accurate or reliable information, and so a lot of people get misdirected for help and support.
Danny Hewis, Manager of Brighter Futures, part of Voluntary Action Maidstone. I would say it's using the right technology, and also it being accessible for the older people for Brighter Futures. Some use technology, but nowhere near enough to make it really worthwhile us trying to connect. So it's having things in place to help people to connect.
I'm Paula Wilkins, Nursing Director at Hospice in Wales. I think the barriers are twofold for us really. One's around, I think, organisation, policies, procedures, which is, I think there's fear involved in that around confidentiality and actually accessing, what we can share, what we can't share, and things like that. So I think our fear possibly causes, and then Caldecott and information governance is another layer onto that. And
as I said this morning, professionals like myself are actually part of the problem and the obstacle, because I'm technophobic, I don't understand technology, it never works for me, I don't know what the right things are that we should be commissioning. So sometimes it's about having these events and listening and hearing and what's going on, you know. So thank you, that's really great. Dominic, do you want to talk about one solution or one model of solution that we could be thinking about?
Risk of hearing my voice too much today. I'll talk you through Casserole. So I think the first thing to say is everything I've presented today already, and Casserole included, it's probably quite important for me to say that to look at this as a couple of religious projects and gone right. It's not so much that it's FutureGov and it's a product and that it's a company thing as such. The background to Casserole was essentially carrying on our business partner, just knocking around ideas around what kind of things we want to fix in the world. And eventually we came across this. So, and similarly to patchwork as well, the beginnings of those kinds of things just results in like 6 to 12 months of unpaid labour trying to persuade people that it's a good idea and getting other things done. So I say that because it's something that anybody could do, really. And there's a million ideas out there that are waiting to be done. I want this to be an example of something that you could go off and do yourself afterwards. But the basis of it was that we want to generally, as a theme, disrupt public services that are not fit for purpose in the 21st century, and we thought Meals on Wheels was probably a good place to start. Obviously, it's not a statutory responsibility, so not everywhere does it, but where they do it, we wanted to change things on that respect. So we came up with the idea. Again, something that was fundamental to our thinking when we started it was, in a way, designing for ourselves in some respects, thinking about volunteering for people like us, which the word volunteering leaves me utterly cold. Look at our pipeline of clients that are coming up. It's almost always involving a housing association because they know where the diners are, because diners are really hard to get hold of because they're usually digitally excluded. The process, I think, again, like leaning on the design side rather than the technology side has been crucial. Thinking about how do people live their lives, both on the cooks and the diner side. Like as a cook, do you want to be promiscuous about how, like, cook for anyone at any point, just when you're available, or do you want something more long-term? As it turns out, the core people, surprisingly, have been into pair-ups. We've had to create a new thing within the service because they didn't want to just cook for random people all the time. They actually wanted to stay with that person as long as they got on well. So we created a new service within Casserole, so you either do whatever you want or pair up with somebody for a longer period of time. Interesting around risk and getting these things done, FutureGov had to take on the risk of Casserole because the council didn't really want to. So I doubled our insurance, took a punt on it and just said, fine, we'll take this risk on us. And lo and behold, we've now persuaded councils that it's not all that risky at all. And really it's just about enabling this to happen and for the community to own it. So sometimes there's a bit of a lesson there, I think, about how can councils not only create innovation funds but also innovation space for these things to happen, so that you can de-risk it for yourself a little bit and see how it goes. But also on the diner side, in terms of design, we've thought very carefully about the user journey through the whole process and not lent on only older people who have iPhones can use this service. In fact, the diner side is driven essentially by phone calls and text messaging. So I'm like employing a customer service team, which I never anticipated when we came up with this idea. Whereas all the cooks are pretty good at self-serving, obviously, because they're generally pretty digitally enabled. But we have to lean really heavily on the civic infrastructure, as I said in my talk. We really rely on people like you guys who know the people we're trying to cook for and to be able to promote and find this. So the way that it works is essentially we don't ask the local area to do anything more than recruit diners, more or less, and promote Casserole locally. And then we deal with all the matchmaking through the customer service process, where we essentially give a cook, a diner, 3 cooks who want to cook for them in their area. They get to choose and then they get paired up and off they go. These are the 2 that have been cooking together for about 18 months now. These numbers are slightly out of date now, but as I said again in the talk, it's mostly 80 plus. We cover 184 local authority areas. The reason we don't literally operate in 184 local authority areas is because we need that civic infrastructure, we need that local support. But those are our guerrilla sales approach, if you want to put it that way, is to actually allow cooks to keep registering, so these numbers keep counting up, even if it's not live in that area. And I just keep nagging chief execs every month saying, do you realise you've now got 83 people who want to cook in your area for casserole? Are you sure you don't want to have casserole in your area? Which has worked quite well, although they will get grumpy with me at some point.
Dominic, how many have you got in Kent?
I should have done that
It
research.
says 57.
Oh, was it there? Good, 57 is the answer. I should read my own slides.
I'm just repeating it for the live stream.
Okay. 57, everybody. And then, yeah, I'll finish on that bit. It was just, in terms of lessons, millions of lessons about the relationship between the council and people trying to innovate services. How can you create parallel structures, I think, an innovation parallel structure where you're not just switching, you're not saying, FutureGov, deliver what Sodexo or somebody can deliver tomorrow with this casserole crowdsource thing. You have to give it time to breathe, and especially given most councils have no idea what's happening in 3 years' time, maybe next year even, it would probably be a good time to start so that you've actually built the capacity in these innovations when you want to start leaning on them. Yeah. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you.
Okay.
Has anyone got any questions for Dominic?
Dominic, I'm just interested in how are you trying to roll it out? Trying to persuade the local authorities to take it on?
Yeah.
And is that your business model as well? Is there some cash for that?
Yeah. So they essentially pay for us to switch it on in their area and for the customer service. As a result, the people who are doing the matching of people.
So you'll run it for?
Yeah, essentially. And what we do is we also within that provide training and support for local organisers to be able to learn the skills to go and find people and recruit them. And so that's the model. I mean, one of the lessons that we picked up from this and other volunteering things is the importance of thinking like an app. In some respects, like building on people's passions, rather than saying, do you want to be a volunteer for Kent? And people kind of go, I suppose, I don't know, what does that involve? Which is what a lot of these volunteering sites are about. They'll just say, do you generically want to volunteer for a place that you may have an association with? And you say, I feel quite average about both those things, so I'll say yes to look like a good citizen, but then I won't necessarily get out of bed and do anything. Whereas if you give them a very clear task, which is, now and again, like, do you care about food? Yes, I do. Do you live in a place? I do indeed live in a place. Well, have you ever thought you could give a spare plate of dinner in your place very easily to someone who's near you? Well, that would be amazing. Can you make it easy for me? Yes, we'll make it very easy for you. Here's the service. And I think that connection of passion, customer service and place is what makes volunteering and micro-volunteering work. If you just stick to generic statements, it's really hard to get people outside of a hardcore gang of volunteers, I think.
Sorry, I've worked in adult social care for such a long time now. What about the risks? I know you said you didn't want to be CRB checked, but if I was, an adult abuser, this would just be perfect.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely perfect. Are local authorities happy to take that risk?
We've moved a long way since the initial pilot. The good thing about the initial pilot was that it was small enough for us to manage very human relationships and essentially watch over everybody who was involved. We've now gone beyond that scale, obviously, and so Tower Hamlets and Barnet both wanted us to introduce DBS checks, which obviously would have captured Jimmy Savile in the 90s, and we know how wonderful DBS and CRB checks are. But nevertheless, if that makes people happy that they believe that we're actually safeguarding their citizens by doing that, well, that's fine. But I don't believe in that. I don't believe CRBs do the job that they're meant to do. We do it because we have to do it to have clients. But we're actually trying to invent some technology that actually is far more effective based on social algorithms and who people are connected to, and being able to show you that this person is connected to this person who you know, which I actually think is the best way of safeguarding people, because people know people then. Whereas I just have no faith in CRB, because other than saying on the site you will have a CRB check, which therefore anyone who will show up anything on a CRB will then never join. It doesn't really serve any purpose, but we have it. And then we went to the food safety people at Reigate and Banstead as well, ahead of time, trying to cut that risk off as well at the head before it hit us. And they were awesome. They just said, thank you so much for coming. People don't normally come and see us. They were in a porter cabin behind the town hall. It was quite a sad story. And then they said, just use this video, embed it when people are registering, and say you really should watch this 5-minute video on food safety before you start cooking for somebody. But essentially, it's a shared risk between FutureGov and the council, and they've decided that that's a decent level of risk management. So I resisted so long on the CRB thing.
Well, I agree with you on the CRB thing, because what does it tell you actually? It means you haven't been caught yet, actually, is what it means.
I wonder if we just put a badge on the side that said you will be CRB checked, that would filter out everybody who would fail a CRB test.
Well,
so then it would be cheaper for everybody.
Well, yeah, maybe. But there are, you know, we certainly would not discourage somebody coming to work for us because they might have something on the CRB check. Because not everything on the CRB check bar you from every type of work. And why should it? It's a Rehabilitation of Offenders Act as well, isn't it? To take into consideration. But sadly, there are people out there, especially in these kind of austere times, who then choose to target, people who they feel can share some of their money, I guess.
I agree totally.
Yeah.
But we do things like get people to show their... The good thing is for the DBS we can get people to show their passport through Skype and stuff like that as well now, which is great. So we've managed to make it relatively cheap and efficient. It's like £5 a go and done fairly quickly, but and turned around in a week now. So.
CRB have recently changed how they do things as well, so there's no longer CRB. You normally get a CRB form, don't you? Get sent out to you. That's all stopped. All you're going to be issued now is with an ID code to say that you've had a CRB. They've stopped all the certificates and everything. Yeah.
I was going to ask you, just coming back to the Casserole Club stuff, in relation to kind of the other value add stuff that's come up, are there any kind of stories where maybe diners and cooks have made like a social connection, then other value add has come through that kind of human interaction stuff?
Yeah, I mean, we've now well, there's one in Reigate, which is the intergenerational one, where one cook takes her kids to the person's house every time because their gran lives in the north of England, and so they never really come into contact with anyone older than their mum. So they quite like that intergenerational thing. But then also there's we've started with the idea around bringing cooks together in the first instance to be able to share recipes and feel like that level of, we are in the Casserole Club together sort of thing. But the next thing will be, can we do some more with diners as well? But again, it's generally a slightly harder thing to bring those people together. But there's definitely things to be done there. But yeah, it is interesting, and I think that's where, up to this point we've had to with these innovations, you have to kind of twist a council's arm and find someone who's enthusiastic and take a bit of a punt on you and give them a deal, because you go to an innovation fund, which means you can offer it really cheap to a council. But when we now talk to people like Tower Hamlets and Barnet, and they say, yeah, of course we'd renew full price because of these other things. Like, it's not just about Meals on Wheels at all. So.
What's gone wrong?
Amazingly and fantastically, we haven't had any horror stories as such. The biggest, it wasn't wrong as such as the best lesson we picked up was around the business model, really, and trying to make it stack up, because we tried to make it a microfinancing thing where you would pay £2.50 for your dinner and we'd get 20p or 50p every time to pay for the site to be run. But one, you need a hell of a lot of transactions to make that stack up for us. Two, the diners really liked that because they didn't want charity. But the cooks really didn't like that because they didn't want to be paid for what they were doing, because it was out of the goodness of their heart. It wasn't. And so we had an imbalance. So we then flipped it and took it out again and said, all right, then we'll do charging. And the cooks were suddenly happy and the diners were unhappy again because they felt like they were getting charity. So the council business model essentially is the fact that we charge to councils is based on some of that learning as well, really, that the only way to make it stack up and sustainable, which is good for everybody, is by just trying to take money off the table at that level, do sort of annual customer service and software contract up here that the council can pay for, and just take that away, and then everybody can get on with it, and everybody feels alright at that point because everybody knows somebody somewhere is paying for it. But that took a long time to turn us around, and it really delayed us for probably 6 or 8 months actually. But the good thing about it being a very open and design-led approach was that we can switch. We can just stop doing certain bits of tech and build new tech and change our minds around. But
and what about the customers the values and the food itself? What's the general level of satisfaction?
Oh, I mean, you can go on our Facebook page and read. I mean, it's like I've never seen bad feedback. So I think, I mean, you know, it's a slightly alien thing at the moment in that it's only enthusiastic people. It's only people who really love cooking and people who are really grateful that they're getting it. So it's generally going to be pretty positive. As we go beyond like hundreds into thousands in a place, I would imagine we'll get some mixed reviews. But we might do something like Uber taxis where your driver rates you and you rate your driver. And unless you get 3 stars out of 5, you get dropped off the service, which is what Uber do. And you can't hire cabs anymore if you're deemed to be a below 3-star passenger. So if you're a below 3-star cook, then we might do the same in the future. But yeah, it's been interesting on that front for sure.
What criteria do you use to view about the cooks being passionate about cooking?
If they hear about it and want to self-volunteer, they can do it. Like, basically, if it's on in an area, it's on. Like, anyone can use it.
So it could be that they're just lazy.
Yeah. It'd be a bit weird, and I think the cooks would probably feel a bit. Well, I would quite like it. I come home at 10 o'clock at night quite regularly, and I think it'd be lovely if my neighbour knocked on my door with some spaghetti bolognese. But I don't know if they'd feel a bit weird about that. When I should have just stopped at the curry house. But yeah, no, totally. I mean, the people I really feel are missing out at the moment are people with disabilities. Actually, like we've nailed, or beginning to nail, older people, like, because that's the angle it's gone in at. But I do feel like there's a disability angle that we're really not getting into at all. But
I was going to say too, and I'm slightly biased working for a carers organisation, but for carers who are cooking food for the person they care for every single day, to have someone else come along and say, actually, here's a dinner for 1 or 2 of you would be fantastic for their point of view.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean, we throw it open. Like, it's part of the danger for us, right? We don't have a huge marketing budget at all. Like, I think part of the danger with these kind of projects is the council look at them and go, they should either be free or almost free. And you're like, you do realise you're getting like a customer service team and whatever. So that's always difficult for the margins and things like that. But beyond that, it's that we have to rely on the local organisations to recruit because they know these people best. And so we kind of go, over to you. Like, it's available. Go and tell everyone, help us.
Husband and wife.
No, we haven't got any actually. No. That'd be interesting to watch out for.
How long does it normally take to somebody who's dying? How long does it normally take them to get a meal from a cook once they register their flight?
So variable. It depends whether we have to go and recruit cooks around them. Normally we're finding, I can't remember what the stat was, another thing that I should know off the top of my head, around what the average distance is. There you go, less than a mile. And so if there's not someone within a mile, it takes a bit longer because we have to go and drum up some support and do some flyering and whatever. But generally we're quite intelligent with our data and show recruiting organisations where our cooks are, and that they might like to lean towards getting diners near those cooks in the first instance, in which case it's a matter of a week, like it's nothing.
We haven't got very long events, and I just wanted to give Mary an opportunity to talk about Dropby and the work that you've been doing as well.
Thank you, that's great. Hi, I'm Mary Baker, and I'm founder of Dropby, and I'm, I guess, proof of what Dominic was saying about how easy it is to just go out and do your own thing. This is a kind of, if I call it a Facebook for older people, that kind of gives the wrong impression. And I'll explain why I started it. But it's a really caring little site, and it's targeted at the over 60s. And it really started up when my son went off to South Africa on his gap year, and wouldn't let his mum go on Facebook. And I thought, well, you know, how else am I going to keep in touch with him? He didn't want me to see his pictures, obviously. At the same time, my mother-in-law was at a stage in her life where she was beginning to go downhill health-wise. And so I said to my son, before he went to Cape Town, well, Archie, I'm going to set my own website up, and you can come on my website. And I'll do this before you come back from South Africa. And that's what I did. And it's not difficult to do, and I'm not technical. And I also pay for this. So, and what it enabled us to do, and third sort of strand of thought here, was that at the time I also went to a conference on the ageing population at Gatwick Airport. And I went home and I thought that I'd been living in a third world country because so many people at this conference were talking about how isolated they are. And I thought, this is crazy because, you know, we all know how easy it is with something like this to be in touch. So I put this together. It's got a very easy to use video link so that, you know, grandchildren could talk to grandma and so on. And it's got chat rooms, and it's just very simple. And because it's me, and my background's marketing, so I know all about marketing, but I used to have a budget of £1 million a year. And when it was my own money, I thought, well, I think I can probably spend 2 and sixpence on this. So I've done no marketing, but people have joined up. And there is a need out there for people to make connections. And this is all about community connections, and Dropby is an example of that. And although I'm based in Surrey, sorry about that, I was a bit nervous about saying that in Kent. And we have great banter on Dropby because actually, I was saying in Surrey, Kent is so much more innovative than anyone in Surrey. And so I've got quite a few members on Dropby who are in Kent, and we always have banter about how good Kent is versus Surrey, which is great. But in fact now, I mean, I'm just looking at the members who are talking online now, and I know this one's in Sussex, this one's in Warwickshire. People don't even have to say where they are, because I'm very sort of aware of security. And we don't use funny names, which is why on all my stuff you'll see I'm Mary B. I now sign myself Mary B because everyone phones me up and says, hi Mary B. So we're Irene B or Wendy K or whatever. We're not sort of odd names that you get on some of these sites. And so slowly it's kind of building up to a really lovely, caring, friendly community. And it's open to everyone, it's free to everyone. My business model is complete rubbish, but it's really, I think, answering a need. And I'm sure if I, you know, could work with some of you guys, we could actually make it even better. So thank you for that. Do you notice that?
Are there any questions for Mary?
Can you show us what it looks like?
Yeah. Are you live on it, Dominic?
I'd turn my phone.
It really says what it's got on the wrapper. It's very simple. The welcome page explains we're not logged in here, so you can't see the functionalities. But it's all simple stuff. It's pretty much like I did have a video link before Facebook. And what's actually developed out of this, yeah, and I've been picked up by the mayor in my area. I was one of his charities last year. The big thing, what people really want, because trust is so important, is we now meet quite a lot. So I do quite a lot of travelling. But obviously I'm based in Godalming, so we tend to have a Godalming get-together. But anyone can arrange an event, and I will try and get to that event. So we had lunch at Redhill Aerodrome a couple of weeks ago, and we had someone drive up from Canterbury, and I think we've got someone in Folkestone who comes. I mean, you know, people, they might be older, but they're still active, and I call it Dropby for a reason. I don't want people spending hours on there. I want them to, you know, keep mentally and physically active. So that's what we try and encourage them to do.
Do you moderate it yourself?
I moderate it myself. But there's been no bad language, so it's been all right.
It was your first marriage yet?
We're getting close, but I'm not saying too much. Yeah, I don't want it to be obviously a dating site, but gosh, you know, we're humans, and it's kind of nice to, you know, get together, and you know, it's lovely. It's great fun what's happening actually.
How many users do you have?
I'm just looking that up. 446 at the moment.
And how long has it been going?
Nearly 3 years.
3 years.
Yeah. And a really helpful room. I mean, the idea is when you log in, you see lots of useful links to places in Surrey and national charities. I could do a page for Kent. It can become whatever it is. My view of this, this is very unfashionable to a big society. Actually, this is going to become whatever the members of Dropby want. And I'll go with the flow. Because frankly, that's what it's all about, empowerment, engagement. And I know I've got particularly men actually on there who, some are disabled, can't get out much. And if they can chat and make contact with new people, that's fantastic. And in fact, I've just discovered that one chap, his sister-in-law, he's in Suffolk, his sister-in-law lives in the Northumbria area, and I've got a member in Northumbria, and they've just contacted, it's exciting.
I suppose it's confusing for me about why you would choose that and not Facebook.
Have you been on Facebook?
Oh, rarely. I'm technophobic, remember?
It's like to see you, Carol.
Yes.
I mean, Facebook, I'm on Facebook now. I've been allowed to go on there for my son now. He's back home again and stopped being drunk every night. But Facebook is very in your face. I mean, and there's quite a lot of advertising. I don't have any advertising here. But I'm a marketeer, so I'm actually saying to people, this is the new way of marketing yourself. You actually engage with people. So I have got some businesses. One of the businesses is Clarendon Wood, which won't mean anything to any of you here, but it's a natural burial ground. Surprising that they picked up on Dropby, but actually, I think we're absolutely right. We've got to start talking a bit more about, have you got your will? What do you want to happen? Because I'm afraid this isn't a if, this is when. And so I want them to do chat rooms. We've had a naturopathic person do chat rooms about keeping healthy in the winter. So it's a lovely potential thing, which I can bore you all day and all night about this. We need to talk, because you're about isolation. My mother-in-law said she was isolated. She lived next door to her daughter, but she still felt isolated. Isolation is something which is in your own head, and we've got to do something about it and understand it better.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. We need to return to the main